let's go ahead and begin. So, this session, if you're here, you've probably thought to yourself before as you've been playing, like, oh man, this thing isn't working, and I bet if I got a new mouthpiece, or maybe I should try different reeds, or maybe synthetic reeds, or something like that will help make it work better. Or you've spent hours and hours researching for like the best mouthpiece and reading all the marketing materials from all the other different companies and all that good stuff, and maybe you've even spent a considerable amount of money on clarinets, barrels, mouthpieces, all the fun stuff, which, to be fair, that is part of the fun of playing the instrument, is getting to explore and experiment with all the equipment. But I want to talk about how to actually know, like, is the fuzzy, stuffy sound, or the squeaking, or the undertones, or the things like that you're getting, is it actually something wrong with the equipment, or is it something that you're doing wrong? And it's a very complicated question to answer, because it's very, very much depends. There's always a balance between your input and the equipment. And I like to think personally that any equipment, as long as it's in good repair, which we'll talk about in a second as well, any equipment can work pretty well and sound pretty good with the right inputs in it. To prove that, I have this clarinet here, which was sent to me to review, and I ended up not reviewing it because it's not good. But it's like $100 clarinet that you can get on Amazon or something like that. And since several months, maybe even a year, maybe even a year and a half ago that I got this instrument. And pretty much since then, I've been using the case with the clarinet in it as a footrest at my desk. So that's like, gives you an idea of the quality of this instrument. But with the mouthpiece it came with, the ligature it came with, and even the reeds it came with, you can see these reeds are not even straight across and don't line up with the mouthpiece. But even with all that, I'll play this and you can hear how it sounds. Good, but it's not bad. It plays, it works. Again, I wouldn't recommend this. That's why I didn't actually review it on my channel. But it works and it functions, and that's showing this idea of the balance between the equipment and you. You can theoretically at least make something very, very bad work. Now what I want to do is go through a series of equipment upgrades so we can see which equipment upgrades actually make a difference. What I'm going to do to start is I'm going to upgrade my mouthpiece. So I have my normal setup, and I'm going to put my mouthpiece on the cheap clarinet with the same reed and ligature. And we'll see how that goes. Not a whole lot better. So this is with a very good mouthpiece. This is the Shedville SAV1 is what I typically play on, but it still didn't sound great. So now I'm going to go back to the bad mouthpiece, or the cheap mouthpiece. It's also a bad mouthpiece. And I'm going to upgrade my reed. So instead of playing on the reeds that came with it, which, by the way, I would never, ever, ever suggest playing on reeds that come with the instrument. With the exception that some reeds do come with like or some instruments come with a Leger reed. I just recently got the Bakun Alpha bass clarinet, and it came with a Leger reed. So if it comes with a name brand reed, then you can use them. But if it doesn't come with a name brand reed, these ones were just in like a paper package with no names on them, then don't play on those reeds. So here's a D'Addario Reserve Evolution reed. Again, everything else is the cheap clarinet. Mouthpiece, ligature, everything. Let's see how this one sounds. Let me make sure it's on good. This is also an important part of equipment is adjusting the positioning of things makes a big difference. This is a quick little reed trick, is if you lower the reed on the mouthpiece, then it's going to make it feel a little bit softer. If you raise it, it'll feel a little bit harder. That's a good trick to know. With the ligature too, you never want it to be too tight so that the reed can vibrate. And that's actually fairly decent. So changing the mouthpiece and upgrading the mouthpiece made much, much, much less difference than upgrading the reed. And again, hopefully you aren't playing on reeds that are that bad that they have no name reeds that came with the instrument. But the cheapest reeds available that are like $10 for 10 reeds or something like that, they're probably similar quality to that. So that's a very, very good place to start, is upgrading the reeds. And again, I hope nobody's playing on $10 for 10 reeds, but that's a great place to start. Now we're gonna go with, we'll skip the ligature just for the sake of time. The ligature makes no difference, so I'll just tell you that. There's subtle things, and there are benefits to having different ligatures, but it's very, very, very subtle. Now I'm going to go with the cheap clarinet with my normal reed mouthpiece ligature setup. So again, it's the Shedville SAV1 with a Leger French cut reed and the good old Bonade inverted ligature. Let's see how that sounds and feels. Much, much better. That feels not the same as my good expensive clarinet, but it feels pretty good. So the moral of that story is, if you're going to upgrade equipment, the reed is the top priority, most important thing to upgrade first, and make sure that your reed is in good shape. And remember, within a box of 10 reeds, some of them may be good and some of them may be bad. So I always recommend to everybody who wants to sound better and play better, is just start using more reeds and going through more reeds. And I know we don't love that because it costs money, but for the price of a mouthpiece, you could get like 50 reeds and might get better results from going through 50 reeds and finding the really good ones rather than buying a new mouthpiece, especially if you have a decent mouthpiece already. So that's kind of the first idea I wanted to talk about, is that with any equipment is doable and you can play any equipment. Reed, top priority, mouthpiece, second priority, and those are actually more important than even the clarinet itself, I think. So that's that. Now I want to talk about disrepair, because that is one thing that can cause serious problems. And you can do this with your own instrument as well, if you have it handy and ready to go. I'm going to get a piece of paper. I have a sticky note, and I'm going to fold the sticky note so that the sticky parts are going together, because we don't want any of the sticky part of the sticky note to touch any of our pads. But what we're going to do with this is we're going to simulate leaks in our instrument. And that's where you can have big issues. So I'm going to put it in the C# key, and I'm just going to stick that sticky note right under that pad and just leave it there. And you want to do it where it's kind of like, you don't want to cover the whole entire hole with the sticky note because then it might actually seal. We want kind of half the hole with the sticky note and half the sticky note holding the pad up. And then I'm going to play a scale going down. I'll play a G major scale starting at G going down and hear what it sounds like with this kind of simulated leak. So you can hear how when we get to C, something feels a little bit fishy and a little bit off. And then when I go down past that, it starts squeaking and gets really stuffy and really fuzzy. So if that kind of thing is happening all the time, then there's a good chance that there is actually a leak or something like that. If it only happens some of the times, then it's probably not the equipment and it's probably more to do with you. Real quick, instead of having 2 layers of sticky note, I'm going to do just 1 layer now and put it in just a little bit more on the edge to simulate a much smaller leak than the big leak. Big leaks are usually pretty easy to tell that there's something serious going wrong. Small leaks can be a little bit more deceptive. So I'm going to play again that descending G major scale with just 1 little corner of my sticky note under the pad and see how that sounds. So that one's much less obvious. It seems to be working okay, but then the G is starting to be really stuffy. Without the sticky note there. The G's a little stuffy, which might just be the instrument too. But with the sticky note, definitely a lot stuffier there at the G. And this is where small leaks can be very deceptive to try to identify. Big leaks is obvious around the pad that is leaking, starts to sound weird, and then below that just doesn't work at all. With small leaks, it can be further down. And the reason for that is because that small leak is trying to work as almost a register key. So if I had a small leak in one of these side keys is a common place for it, it might work where everything seems to be fine, and then all of a sudden you get a note that just always squeaks and never comes out right. That can also happen with a leak in the register key too, where you find that the low notes are always wanting to play in the higher register. And especially kind of starting on the low E will pop up to the high register because the register key is leaking, so that makes sense. So that's a way to kind of feel what's happening with a leak. The other way, there's 2 other ways that you can tell if a leak is happening. One very common one is around the bridge key and the bridge key alignment. So I'm going to put the piece of paper, I'll do two layers of paper, in the pad at the top of the right hand. This one's tricky, you kind of have to keep it held down to keep the sticky note in there. But I'm going to play down the scale from that B flat down to F, and you can hear that there's kind of this, again, resistance, stuffiness, kind of a leak feel to it. And as I'm doing that, the notes are coming out fine, so it has me thinking, well, it feels bad, but the notes are still coming out, so I'm thinking, is it the equipment or is it me? That's the whole premise, right? Is it me or the equipment? Should I do something more air, more embouchure pressure, less embouchure pressure? How do I make that work? Or is it genuinely the clarinet? To test the clarinet, what we can do is we can try different finger pressures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very gentle with my fingers as I go from that B flat down to F with almost no pressure at all. Oh, that got a lot worse. Now I'm going to try really squeezing and adding more pressure, finger pressure. Ah, that's better. If increasing or decreasing the finger pressure makes a difference, then it's probably something to do with the clarinet, with the exception that you have to pay attention to that your fingers are covering the holes. That's another way to make it really seem like there's something wrong with the equipment, but it's actually your fingers. The solution to that is to see if it happens all the time. If it's very consistent on like all of those low notes is always stuffy and you have to squeeze more to get it to work well, then there's probably an adjustment thing that could be better. If it's random notes kind of occasionally, then it could be your fingers missing the holes or something like that. So that's one of the common ones, and the thing that would cause this pad to not fully seal could be a bad pad, of course, always, but it's also probably a bridge key adjustment issue, where if the bridge key is off in the wrong way, then that pad won't fully go down. If it's off in the other way, then this pad won't fully go down, and that's one of the key tricky bits of the clarinet mechanism, is that bridge key. Getting that adjusted right is really tricky. What you can do is, if you gently press down the right hand ring keys, and then you can kind of poke that pad, and right now, I don't know if this will show up on the video, but as I'm gently pressing that, if I go to poke this, you can see there's a little bit of wiggle room in there, and I can feel the ring under my finger moving when I do that. So that means that the bridge key isn't aligned properly, and that pad isn't sealing well when I go down. And if I do the test again of being very gentle with my fingers as I go down the scale, then it's not working. So I know I can adjust my bridge key and get that lined up. With the bridge key adjustment, you want to be where the bridge key itself will sometimes have ways to see how it lines up. On my other clarinet, you can see there's actually even lines on the upper key to show where it should line up. But whether or not you have that doesn't matter. You can also look at these rods for the left hand rod should line up with the right hand rod. And that's another way to check if your bridge key is in good alignment. If the bridge key's in good alignment and you're still having leaking happening on the right hand, then you probably want to bring it in for repair. One other way we can check for leaks and things like that is the suction test. This is where you take 1/2 of your clarinet, and you can do this with both the upper joint and the lower joint. Cover all the fingers, so all the holes are covered. Stick your hand on the bottom, so that's covered as well. And then you're going to suck through the clarinet. And you all can try this if you want. You suck through the clarinet, and you should create a good seal and a good suction. So you can hear when I lift my finger up, there's kind of a pop. And I can feel that good suction building up as I suck on the clarinet. And then I hear that good suction. Same thing works for the right hand. You just take the bell off, cover that, finger a low E, suck through it, and then get that pop to happen. If you can't feel a suction building up and it doesn't pop when you lift up your finger, that's also a sign that you have something that's leaking. The suction test isn't perfect, and sometimes you can have a leak, and when you suck on it, the suction actually closes up the leak. So it's not 100% perfect. You could still pass the suction test and still have a leak happening, but it's probably a very, very small leak if that's the case. One other common issue that always happens that I want to bring up is where your left pinky B isn't working, and this is really frustrating when you're first learning to cross the break and you're trying to cross the break, but the pad itself isn't fully closing, and then you're not sure if it's you or the clarinet. There's two good ways to test this. One, to start investigating it, play the D above the B, then very slowly press just your left pinky down on the key and see if the note pops out. And if as you're gradually pressing the pinky key down, it's popping out very easily and very clearly, then you're in good shape. I'm going to put the sticky pad in the higher of these two lower keys to simulate what that would be if it's out of adjustment and how that would sound. Like, no matter how hard I press on that, the B never actually pops out. So that means there's an adjustment issue. The other great way to check that adjustment is to very gently play the left B where it's not quite coming out. Like I'm blowing, but it's really stuffy and not coming out. And then I'm going to press the right pinky C and see if that pops it into focus. And when I press that, what's happening is it's closing this pad and creating a seal. this is an adjustment that you can do on your own pretty easily. I'll demonstrate it real quick. So the reason why this happens is when we press the left pinky B key, it has to also press down the right pinky C key. And the way it does that is there's this little thin piece of metal that connects those two keys in here. And that little thin piece of metal goes out of adjustment very easily. So when you very lightly press the left pinky B, you can check these two pads and see if there's any wiggling in either of them. It will usually be the upper one. If it's the lower one, you might want to take it to a repair person to get fixed because it's easy to over adjust that and cause other problems. But oftentimes it's this upper pad that has a little wiggle in it. You can see, let me see if I can get the right angle here. See how that wiggles a little bit? That little bit of wiggling means that it's not sealing fully. So what we do is we hold the little footy key, that little guy back there that connects the two keys. We hold that up with our left hand to keep that from going down. And then we put pressure on this top key to sort of gently bend that key. Whenever you're bending keys, do just a little bit at a time. Be very, very gentle with it. If you don't feel confident doing that, take it to a repair person and they can fix it really, really quick. On the topic of repair, if possible, it's always, always, always better to go to a individual local repair person. Find somebody who works out of their garage or owns their own shop kind of thing, rather than taking it to a big store, because oftentimes the big stores just send it to a local repair person and it takes longer and costs more money. Just try to find a local repair person, and even a very not a super top tier best of the best repair person can do this left hand B adjustment very, very, very easy. So that's most of the mechanics of the instrument that tends to go wrong, and hopefully that gives you an idea of how to kind of identify leaks and those kinds of issues. Another really common issue that will happen are reed issues. Like I demonstrated at the beginning, reeds are the most important and the most impactful piece of equipment. So make sure with the reeds that you're trying lots of reeds. If everything isn't working, all of the sound is stuffy, all of the notes are stuffy, then trying a different reed could be a good bet. And even just different reeds in the same box can make a big difference, but also looking at different brands and things like that. There's also a little nuance to finding a reed that matches up with your mouthpiece well that also matters. But you can try all kinds of things with reeds, and I really encourage you actually to try more reeds. The one exception to that, I'll say, is once you find a brand and strength that is generally working, then kind of settle into that and stick with that. Try a lot of those, get lots of boxes of those and go through all of them to find the best ones. But if you're jumping between strengths or different brands and different strengths, it can get confusing to our sort of subconscious that's trying to calibrate to how to play the instrument. One of the worst things you can do is, as you're trying to move up a reed strength, is to warm up on your normal reeds and then play on the harder reed that you're trying to move up to, or vice versa, because as you're warming up, you're getting to calibrate it to whatever strength that is, and then when you go to other strength, it just feels terrible and awful. So that's my quick thoughts on reeds. And then the last thing that I want to do is share with you, and I'll put it in the chat as well. I think I can do this easily. I made a little flow chart to help you to decide if it's you or if it's your clarinet and which to be focused on. Let me put that in the chat real quick, and then I will share my screen with it as well and kind of talk us through it. So it's a real basic, simple, easy to flow chart. Not really. It's quite complicated because this is kind of a complicated issue. But we start up here at one of these red boxes of one of the potential issues. These are kind of the standard issues that have us thinking am I doing something wrong, or is there something wrong with my equipment? So let's say you're looking at undertones. Undertones have this dotted line, so you'd go to this first box. Does it only happen when moving between notes? So when you're leaping up into higher notes, for example. If yes, if it only happens when moving between notes, then it's probably you. If no, continue following the dotted line over to here. does it get better if you use more air and or embouchure support? If yes, it's probably you. And you should just use more air and embouchure support and fix it. If not, does it happen on one note or multiple notes? Continue following the dotted line for undertones. Once you get here, it's the same however you got here. You can follow whichever path it is. If it's on all of the notes, for example, actually, no, that wouldn't happen on undertones. Let's say for undertones, it's a few notes. It's kind of that G up to C where you're always getting undertones. So on multiple notes, is it all the notes below a specific point or kind of miscellaneous notes? Undertones on G up to C, you're fine below G. So it's not that. So it's happening on miscellaneous notes. Does it only happen on specific notes? Yeah, I only get undertones on the G, A, B, C, and the half steps in between too. Great. Does it always happen on those notes? No, some days it's better than others. Sometimes in different contexts it works well. Then it's you. You just need to find the right support to get those undertones. If yes, does it get better when you squeeze your fingers harder like we talked about? If yes, then it's an equipment issue. If no, just changing your embouchure help. If changing your embouchure helps, then do that with your embouchure. If not, then we get over here to the reeds and ask, does it happen on all of your reeds? If not, blame the reed. Use the reeds that it doesn't happen on. Find more reeds that it doesn't happen on. If yes, is your mouthpiece in good shape? And we didn't talk about this too much. Let me stop sharing for a second. On this, from the cheap Clarinet, the mouthpiece, this might be hard to see. Oh, we might get a good angle. You can see how there's like maybe a little roughness around the window of the mouthpiece. You can also see it's like a very textured table where you can see how they cut it or printed it. It's kind of rough in general. So those kinds of things are indications of not a great mouthpiece. Also, any kind of chips or dents, which I don't have good examples of on this one, but any like chips, dents, anything like that in the mouthpiece means it's not in good shape. So you should probably get a new mouthpiece. And then this how many reeds have you tried is a really good one too. Oftentimes people have their like couple reeds that they play on, and once those go bad, they don't realize it's gone bad because it's happened so gradually. So if you've tried more than 5 reeds and it's still a problem, then maybe try a different strength of reeds. If you've done less than 5 reeds, then you just need to try more reeds. So that's the flow chart. That's in the chat. We maybe have time for questions for one very quick question. If anybody, let me see if anybody typed anything in the chat. I don't think so. Yeah, we have 1 minute if anybody has a very quick question that they want to type in the chat. And if not, that's totally fine. But hopefully this was helpful to answer that question of, is it me or is it the equipment that's causing my problems? And remember that it's always a balance where even on bad equipment, you can make it work. Ken asked about the importance of reed and mouthpiece combination. Yep, super quick. Mouthpieces are curved, reeds lay against them flat. The more open that curve, the softer reed you need. The more closed that curve, the harder reed you need. If you Google Van Doren mouthpiece chart, you can see Van Doren's line of mouthpieces and the reed strength they recommend to go with that. Playing on a 40-year-old clarinet, will it last 10 more years? Potentially. Take it to a good repair person, see what they think about it, and they can tell you more. Yeah. Plastic reeds are great. I play on Legers.